if there's something that you believe in, you just do it. And make a mistake. I've made mistakes. Make the mistake, but get up and do it all over again. So I think there were things that I always wanted to do, but I was judged for it. And that's why, again, the heart, I was judged, I was put down, I was told it couldn't be done. But in my mind, I was like, screw that, I'm going to do it anyway, you know.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 52 of the Say Again podcast with me, Amrita Tripathi. I'm so excited we're doing a new season, and I'm even more excited to bring you today's guest, Kaveri Lalchand. I think you're dialing in from Chennai, if I'm not mistaken. It's great to have you on the podcast and to see you after so many years.
Yes, hi, Vanakkam from Chennai. Nice to see you too, Amrita. It's
And
been
Kaveri,
like
yeah. So we have Kaveri on the podcast today to talk about many things, including her brand. We'll be talking about sustainable fashion. We'll be talking a little bit about the pressures when it comes to especially women in fashion, Kaveri. That's something we spoke about many years ago when you were kicking off. But let's start by talking a little bit about how you set up that brand. It looks like 2011. So it's been quite a decade and change. Tell me a little bit about your journey, setting up the brand, setting up the company, what your mission really was with this.
So actually, when I started Amrita, had no uh, idea, had no thought that it would ever grow into a brand that it is today, that it would be so loved. I started it just out of a personal need. And I think that's where the beauty of it lies, that I started it from a very personal space. And what I didn't realize at that time is that the space that I was speaking from is a space where a lot of women are at. I didn't realize it, and of course now it makes sense. So I started it for a very personal reason, from a very personal space from within, wanting to make comfortable, easy to wear, stylish clothes in linen, pure linen fabrics. Also in styles and in sizes that were not available. I'm saying, and I put styles and sizes together because it's not just about size; it's about styles and and different body types that we cover, and different body types that are not just generally available off the rack. So I started making clothes with that in mind, and didn't ever think that it will take off into a business or even develop into a brand or a label that it is today. Uh, I think again that's where the basic natural flow of the garments came from, because I wasn't designing or creating for a business or trying to hit numbers right in the beginning. So I was making clothes that were making women feel good. And slowly, and I started off with 3 tailors in my backyard, which I covered with a roof, and I started doing exhibitions, packing garments in suitcases. I still do that. I still send my team to different cities where we'd like to reach out and have clothes available to women from different areas of the country and also internationally. So I started doing that, making clothes, taking them in suitcases, and soon realizing that what I was feeling in terms of what I was looking for in my clothing, or what I'd realized that I was looking for, many women didn't realize that that's what they wanted as well. So I was able to translate like an inner need.
Yeah.
It's not just for my clothes are not just superficial surface dressing. You see, my clothes,
Yeah.
I was actually catering to a need which a lot of women had not really verbalized, but I was able to provide with my clothing, which was clothes that made you feel confident, clothes that allowed you to be yourself, clothes that were comfortable, clothes that didn't let you down. So I was doing all that, and soon people started coming back for more. And it took a while for me to realize that what I was doing, I mean, then it automatically developed into a bigger business. And it happened very organically and beautifully. And so that's where it started from. And now, after all these years, I've realized that's how it actually grew.
And it's so interesting. You probably won't remember this, but many years ago, as you had an exhibition in Delhi, and I'd actually come, and I picked up I picked up an outfit. I still have actually wore it for I think about 15 years. So if you need an endorsement, I'm one of your customers. And then recently in Chennai a few years ago, firstly, I mean, it's phenomenal. The design, it's very, the style, as you said, it's also sophisticated. When you have these speaking engagements, it's something that stands out. So it's always held me in good stead. But that conversation with you, because I remember I was like hemming and hawing and being like, oh my God, and like, my body's changed and I put on weight and nothing looks good. And you were like, woman, this is what everyone keeps telling me. And this is the reason we need to find a way to, to make sure that our wardrobes work for us. And it's when you put it in that way, I'm of course paraphrasing, but it is almost revolutionary, right? Like, because I think you have to change that perspective and be like, stop hating on your own body or hating yourself and you don't fit into things, and find clothes that let you breathe, that let you be, and find your own style. So that conversation stayed with me. That snippet of a conversation stayed with me. And I know the hearts behind you are also very much a part of your brand. Can you talk to us a little bit about this idea of love by Kaveri, this idea of having, the sort of hidden detailing inside the tunic or the kurta, which has a little heart, and it just makes you feel good.
So what you said before, that conversation, when I said stop hating on yourself, right? Again, it's been a journey. We all have those days where we stand in front of the closet or stand in front of the mirror and say, I have nothing to wear, or I feel like I don't feel good about myself, or you don't feel. So I've had many of those, crying into my closet and saying I have nothing to wear, and many of those days where you go to a store and you come out feeling really shitty about yourself. Because like I say over and over again, when you go into a store and you can't find something that doesn't fit or doesn't work for your body type, and you don't, at the end of the day, you don't feel bad that you couldn't get an outfit. You feel bad, you're made to feel bad about yourself. You end up feeling bad about yourself. So that's what the little heart is for. First is to learn to love yourself. And again, very personal journey, personal growth. I wasn't always this confident person who it's taken. I mean, we all want to be confident women, and it takes a lot of working. It takes a lot of tears to finally actually get here. So this little heart is a reminder to say, hey, you know what? Go easy on yourself. Love yourself a little bit more. And then don't judge the person in front of you, or love the other person, love the people in front of you or around you. It's corny and it's a cliche, but really, it'll be a nicer place if you all just kind of liked or loved each other a little bit more.
Yeah, I hear you. And this thing of like spreading kindness, right? And sort of this is, especially in today's day and age, a little bit more joy, a little bit more self-love and confidence. But can you talk me through, as an entrepreneur, as a leader who is a woman, and I've done a little bit of work, working with women executives and stuff, also looking at confidence as one of those, we call it a soft skill or a soft power, but it's actually really, really central to leadership. It's central to showing up. And, even for non-leaders, of course, I think confidence is one of those great skills that you just brought up as well. How do you walk that line of, like, even when you weren't confident, this sort of thing of building up, because it's not an easy thing to do what you did. It's also takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work on yourself. It takes a lot of work to project, but at the end of the day, you're running a business as well. So can you talk us through that sort of lens of confidence and empowerment?
There have been days of, many days and many instances of, when you've not felt very confident or not felt very sure. One thing that I've always done, and I tell when I talk to young people, I say, just keep at it. You just keep at it. Now, you have to do it. These certain little things that it has to be done, so just do it. Or just keep at it till you crack it. It's in terms of confidence and, believing in yourself, you have to be true. If there's something that you truly believe in, I know these are all very cliches, but it's, if there's something that you believe in, you just do it and make a mistake. And I've made mistakes. Make the mistake, but get up and do it all over again, So I think there were things that I always wanted to do, but I was judged for it. And that's why, again, the heart, and for us not to judge others. I was judged. I was put down. I was told it couldn't be done. But in my mind, I was like, screw that. I'm going to do it anyway. There were times when I was completely right, and there were times when I was completely wrong. And a very good friend of mine told me something. He said, you may be right or you may be wrong, but your decision is your decision. Whether it's a right decision or the wrong decision, but just make that decision and see it through. And then learn from it as you go along. So I think it would just be to keep at it, to believe in a thought or an idea, and just try again.
Picking yourself up, and I know it's very hard when you fail. I think we have this kind of language around failure that makes it sound like, oh, it's so easy, but obviously it's a personal thing, right? When you fail at a personal project, when you fail at something that you're betting on that other people might not see the vision behind. This was just as a question to you, how important is this? And in case this could prove to be, insightful for anyone listening or watching, how important is it? How important are the folks you surround yourself with, whether it's advisors, mentors, friends, especially when you're trying to chase a vision or a mission where you might not have the benefit of being like, in a company where you have kind of a, sort of support system or peers. How important is that circle?
It is very, very, very important because, again, I'm talking for personal. I feel they can either make or break you. When there are times when you're not sure, there are things that you believe in, but maybe it's not going the way that you wanted, or you need a little bit more guidance and advice, or you need a little bit of a different viewpoint. You need to be sure you have the people who have your best interests at heart and who are not going to tell you what you want to hear and who is going to support you no matter what. People who encourage you. There are enough people who say they're not really discouraging, but they're not encouraging either. So it's very important. So one is people who believe in you, people who will support you no matter what, and really people who encourage you, who say, you know what, you might have made a mistake. It doesn't matter, go for it. Just sometimes you just need that little bit of stamp of reassurance that, okay, you know what, especially I'll tell you, it's a very personal thing. I mean, for a very personal thing with the business, because I expanded the business and it was wonderful. People were saying, open a store here, open a store there. And I'm one of those people who just, when opportunity knocks, I want to grab it. And if I don't take it, I feel like I've lost that opportunity. So that's another learning that, it can come back. So I did a lot of things, and just having my support system of my immediate family and a couple of really close friends who says, you know what, Kaveri, we know you can do it. If anybody can, you can. I mean, it may be just friends and family telling me that, but that really, really helped. So I think friends and family is one thing, but also surround yourself with experts. So another very wise person told me that there is till a certain point you can handle things on your own. But you know what? The best thing is go to a professional. So as much as possible, go to professionals who know. So surround yourself with people, or, have those contacts and have relationships with people who are professionals in those different areas. So as a business, when I started very small, and it just grew organically. And it literally, when it was small, I was doing everything, right? And it actually reached a point where I should not have been doing everything because the business grew. And it took me a little while to realize that, you know what, I can't. And now I really need to go to the professionals. And so I slowly built relationships with people. So you surround yourself with people, because as a growing business, you can't afford maybe to hire all these professionals and have them on your payroll, but you need their expertise. So surround yourself with people who can guide you in a more professional manner as well.
And then you have to be open to listening to their input. I think that's also a tough one, right? When it's like grown to a certain extent, you are the one who has a final say and call, but learning to listen also is tough.
Yes, very, very important. But and also I have to say that learning to listen is important. And also, while one might be passionate and a bit of a dreamer, at the end of the day, you start something with a passion and a dream, but after a while, when it converts into a business, you need to find that balance where you can still express your passion and enjoy it, and also find the balance of running a business.
Interesting. And then how do you, as a leader now, how do you pay that forward? Where do you index on empathy as a leader? How important is it for you to find that balance yourself in terms of being a, sort of leader who gets results, of course, but also is able to manage maybe sort of the emotional, the EQ, the well-being. It's an insane world we are in right now. And I think that stress levels have hit the roof for everybody. So how do you pay that forward as a leader?
So if people see my Instagram, you see a lot of my posts are all about with my team. And for me, I'm a very, very people's person, and I'm very emotional, and maybe a little bit too much. But it's, for me, I wouldn't change. I'm trying to box it up. I don't want to be non-emotional, but I can't I can't make heart-based decisions when it comes to business. So starting with my empathy for me has come in good stead when I'm trying to design. You see, I'm understanding what a person is going through in different situations in her life. But when it comes to my team, it's for me it's a very, very special thing. My favorite place is in my factory with my team. I've had people who have been with me since 2011. Original core team of 9 people that we worked in the backyard of my house. Pretty much all of them are still here. It's the most important thing for me. When I go there and we talk about women empowerment, I have the loveliest stories of my tailors, my little girls, young girls who sit and do they're not very young anymore, they're all in their 30s, but who do the tassels. I get very emotional talking about it, to know that I've played an important part in their lives. So it's very important for me when I design a product, and also in the team that I have. It's actually really, really heartwarming. It's very, very heartwarming. They're so loyal to me. They do anything for me. It's because it's not just a take, you see. And I think right from the beginning, even with the new team that comes in, is to praise, to give credit where it's due. So they all have a sense of ownership. You know, they say number company means my company, our company. You know, when they talk about it, is a our company, you know, is whatever they say. So it is very, very endearing, very, very special. And that's just the way I am. Sometimes maybe I think I need to be a little less emotional. And in my company, it's 60 or even now 65% women. So we have definitely more women in our company. And it's really wonderful because all of them are bringing in secondary incomes, a second income to their homes. They all are very, very empowered. There are many single women in my organization now who say that, you know, we tell our parents that it's okay. Kaveri ma'am is not married and, you know, looking after her parents. We also want to be not married. And it's really lovely for me to see things like that and hear things like that from you know, people from the backgrounds, the low economic backgrounds, who are working in my offices, that trimmers, and you know, it's wonderful. And you know, the team that has been with me forever. I have attended like coming of age ceremony of my tailor's daughter. Then I've gone to her wedding, and then I've gone to the naming ceremony of the grandchild. So we are all a one big family here. We love to throw parties. Any excuse, we have parties. You know, we have our once a month birthday party. It's just an excuse to get cake, chips, and samsa. So once a month we do that, and like I said, even when there had been times when, you know, pandemic time when everything became zero, they all said, "Don't worry, we will manage, we will survive." You know, I tried as best as possible, and then the minute we opened, everybody came back. And actually, during the pandemic time, I don't know how I thought about it or what happened. At that time, we were only supposed to be shut for 2 weeks. I gave most of my tailors, who some of them have machines at home, those who didn't, we called autos, put one machine in the auto. And that day we closed, 18th of March or something it was. I don't know when, we sent everybody back. I sent all my tailors with a machine. So I said, here, and some work. I said, here, do some work, and then in your neighborhood you can get some tailoring work, this, that 200, you know, 100 rupees, 200 rupees tailoring work. And that became 2.5 months, and they managed. Yeah, so that's the beautiful experience that I have. And like I said, it's not just a take, so it worked out.
Yeah. So I'll come back to ask you a little bit about the, you know, ups and downs and what you find the hardest about entrepreneurship. But let's talk a little bit about the expansion you spoke about. You know, so it started, you know, you had this vision, you had this dream. You've told us a little bit about the personal reason for setting up your brand, and now it's not just Chennai. It's Chennai, Mumbai, Ahmedabad. I think there was Dubai. You were in Paris Fashion Week. You were at the Lakme Fashion Week. Good Lord, Kaveri, what is going on?
Okay, 4 years or 5 years of doing this, um, I felt, okay, you know, people are calling me and saying, where can we buy your clothes? I said, I want to open a store, because I was like, okay, what's the next step? And I'm from Chennai, but I didn't want to open a store in Chennai. I said, that's too easy. If I have to open, I have to open a store in Bombay. For me, that's the real challenge. And I always challenge myself. I always want to be able to do things that are not easy. If it's easy, it's easy. Then I don't feel like I've achieved much. So I said I want to open my store, and I opened my first store in 2016 in Kalagoda in Bombay, and it ran till 2020, till the pandemic. And then in mid 2023, I reopened again. So again, at that point, when I opened my first store, there wasn't any expansion plans. But then one thing led to another, and yes, we realized that there was a market. We had built a good following. The brand name was being recognized and sought after, and we opened stores. We did it without any funding. We were bootstrapped. We are bootstrapped. And, we finally went to professionals, hired marketing agencies, did some planned marketing, and slowly just went along the way. And again, pandemic time, everything came down to zero, which was fine, because I actually was able to start fresh on a clean slate, but with so much more knowledge, learning, and experience, and a little bit and I considered it like, a fresh start, but with so much more experience behind it. And then, of course, Paris happened. Somebody told me, you should do this show in Paris. It's called Who's Next? It's a B2B designer show. And then I started looking it up, and then I got obsessed. Takira got into my head, must do Paris. And it worked out very well, because my sister was in London, and we both went and set up stall in Paris, and it was wonderful. So I did it again for 3 years. 17, 18, 19. We did it 20. And then the pandemic hit the next year. And since then, I've not been able to go back, because then I decided to focus on the India market. But it was wonderful to take this to Paris, to London. I've done shows in London. These are trade shows. So we still are supplying to some of the stores and some of the contacts that we got. And it was wonderful seeing our designs and our work being appreciated. I was able to take a little bit of our Indian traditional crafts and traditional techniques were dyeing and shibori and bandhani, not shibori, and leria, and did a whole bunch of leria linen garments, which was so well received in Europe, and it was wonderful.
I do want to ask you, so mainly it's linen and it's sort of like luxury or it's premium, but you also have a partnership now to work with Khadi with a trust. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And this again, we'll bring back maybe why is it important to have sort of sustainability in fashion? It became a sort of trendy phrase a few years ago, but for you and the folks you work with, what is core to that whole mission?
So I just want to talk very quickly about sustainability. Yes, it became a buzzword a couple of years ago, and everybody wants to say they're sustainable. I don't like to give myself that label, because there are a lot of criteria that one needs to fulfill to be actually called sustainable in India. And actually, there are no government regulations. And I'd spoken to the Mr. Sunil Sethi of the Fashion Design Council of India, saying that before a brand calls themselves sustainable, I think maybe even someone like the Fashion Design Council of India can put a set of guidelines and criteria that need to be fulfilled to call oneself sustainable. It's hard to be a truly sustainable brand, but there are certain things that we can do to a degree. Now, I work with linen fabrics, natural fabrics, but am I a sustainable brand? Like, there are going by some of the European guidelines, I'm not. But it's a slow fashion brand, where, again, we don't use synthetic material that is bad for the environment. We use natural fabrics that are biodegradable. We try as much as possible to reduce our carbon footprint. We try not to use as much plastic, but, we have to to a certain degree. So I don't think it's right for brands to use the word sustainable. I try and avoid it as much as possible. We say we use natural fabric. We call ourselves a slow fashion brand, which we are. Slow fashion means each piece is individually handcrafted, which we do, and we love that. Anything that takes a little bit more work and effort, we like to do that. So embroideries are detailed and layered, and so that's what.
Interesting. Okay. So slow fashion and the Khadi, there's a partnership.
So what happened was, so I worked with the Gandhigram Trust, Tamil Nadu. right? So, and I had visited one of their exhibitions, and they had clothes for sale. They had khadi saris and clothes, and all the clothes were just kurtas, men's kurtas, women's kurtas, and men's shirts. So I got, I love the fabric. It's hand natural, hand woven, and of course, has its historical and national significance. And it's lovely to wear, it's cool and comfortable. So I was a little upset, actually. I was like, such beautiful fabrics, and what have we made? Kurtas and shirts. So I spoke to them. I said, now, they said, we want young people to start wearing khadi. I said, nobody's going to wear this. Young people aren't going to be wearing this. Stylish women aren't going to be wearing this. I mean, there's only that much that, you can wear. So then this whole thing came about that, okay, they would supply the fabric. I would then make interesting, contemporary, stylish, in nice, fresh colors, garments using khadi, and, help promote the use of khadi, popularity, and also create awareness of what exactly khadi is. So just make it more accessible, because it's nicer. So that was my collaboration with them. And this was one little capsule we did where we made contemporary garments, and it was launched in my store in Chennai, and we are also selling it through our stores in Goa and Kochi, where we hope over the December season, and because they both, Goa and Kochi, are venues of big art shows, the Kochi Biennale and the Serendipity Art Festival in Goa. It will get a lot of exposure, international exposure, and the fabric, of course, is just so soft and beautiful to wear, and all the pieces have got a little write-up about khadi. So that was our marketing plan for this capsule. Our next capsule is going to be just designing khadi saris, where khadi saris, again, when you think khadi saris, there is a certain way of what it will look like. So now again, we're going to use khadi, and but put in our beautiful designer work on it.
Nice. Okay. Looking forward to seeing that. Just a few more questions for you, Kaveri, right now. In the interest of time, I have many, many questions for you. Otherwise, as you know, in general.
And I
But as you look back at your own journey, and of course, there was a lot of sort of work in the cultural space before Kaveri. There are a lot of different influences, literary. You ran a cultural space as well. What are some of the most important influences for you today? And I'm going to ask you also a little bit about what's changed in terms of how you look at success or failure for yourself. Because you've worn different hats, and I think what's interesting is when you transition careers, there's no one set of goalposts that works for everyone. We all have to make up our own sort of definitions almost of success, failure. How do you gauge your journey, and what are some of the influences that have stayed with you?
Actually, I've done many different things, and one good thing or bad thing is that if I feel passionately about something, I feel strongly about something, I feel excited about something, I just jump into it and do it. So I wouldn't say that I keep changing my mind. Not at all. I just get very drawn and very excited and very enthusiastic about something. And when I start doing something, I do it very, very deeply. So many influences. One is I actually lived for a year in an ashram, for a whole year, and I was between one career path and another, and one finished, and before I could think of what I wanted to do, I just happened to visit an ashram, and it was something again very fresh and new to me. So I didn't give it a lot of thought. I just knew that it felt nice and I liked it. And over there also I did my own thing. So while I lived in an ashram, it opened up a whole host of new experiences. One most important thing, which was meditation, of course, like spirituality, so much, religion, but more like a general spiritual outlook, and readings, meditation, sitting, being able to sit quietly, being able to bring myself back to the core. Because again, while I have so many different things, so that was a big change. My theater has given me confidence to speak in front of people. My publishing house made me look at things differently. So everything was a journey and a learning along the way, which I feel has brought me to this point, even 11 years ago when I decided to start something, and then it just grew one thing after another. So even my computer designing skills, where while I was living in the ashram, that's when I picked up Photoshop and Illustrator, because I used to work on their magazine. That helped me when I started my labor. So I can't really pinpoint. It's just everything that's brought me together, and just being open to pick up new things along the way.
I love that. So that curiosity, of course, becomes like such a through line. Have you changed how you look at success or failure, or for anyone who's watching or listening? What's your take on success and failure now?
Yeah, because success is generally equated to financial success. So I get, oh, you're so big now. And for me, that's not a compliment. Definitely, I think success is well, when I started out making clothes, it was to make clothes that made women feel good. And actually, recently somebody asked me, do you do, is your name, you're so famous. I was like, please, that's not what I did this business for. And I think success is being able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, I like what I've done. I like what I have done for people. I like what I've done. Yeah, I like what I've done. I like myself and I like what I've done for people, be it the
Yeah.
people who work for me or even my customers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who probably shares anecdotes. I mean, you probably have anecdotes from like things folks have shared.
And I'm hearing a lot of, I have your clothes from 10 years ago. Yeah, it's coming out more and
Same. Because it's such an and it would be so nice if that was the norm, but it's not. It's actually it also means that people treasure like you there are items in your collection that you like that make you feel good, like you said, but also that last, which I think is such a
yes, because also I don't design following trends.
yeah, that's interesting.
So these are they're just classic pieces.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say timeless. It's just they're just nice garments.
Yeah, which stay. Like if you can take care of them, they will out survive us possibly. So final one for the moment is there someone that you'd like to share that who you'd like to talk about, someone or something that you're grateful for? We usually try and bring gratitude in as we wind down.
Definitely, I'm like a walking cliche. Yeah, no, really, I wouldn't have been able to do this without my mother and my father and my family, and of course my team. Really, I tell them all the time, as if I can be sitting and sewing garments. So my family and my team.
I love that. That's well. Shout out to them, and I'm hopefully they can watch or listen to this episode soon and share their love right back at you. Thank you so much, Kavi, for taking out the time. It was lovely to chat with you. I don't know
Right.
how many years I've been planning to do an interview with you, but we got there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.